Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Way back in the late 90s, I was serving out my initial enlistment with the United States Army, assigned to a unit at Tiangsan Garrison in Seoul, South Korea, when I was pulled kicking and screaming from my platoon to serve as the company's training ammunition manager. Enter the Master Sergeant Jerk. Master Sergeant Jerk did not get along with anyone in the rear echelon and would find any reason to interfere with your day, assigning tasks such as cleaning the latrines, servicing the company vehicles, general custodial duties around the office, regardless of what projects you were working on or the deadline to have it completed. One fine full morning, I was working on a report headed to the battalion training manager. This report, literally MS PowerPoint slides, was time sensitive and needed to be completed as soon as possible, so that the battalion training manager could write his report. Yup, more slides. Master Sergeant Jerk walked into the company area, took one look at me and said, "Specialist." That was me. "If you have time for coffee, you have time to sweep the parking lot." I stood at ease, said Master Sergeant. "I need to complete this report too." "I didn't ask for your excuse." I raised my voice so that the entire office could hear. "Master Sergeant, Park Sergeant, battalion training manager, wants this report as soon as possible." As anticipated, Master Sergeant Jerk also raised his voice. "Sergeant, the battalion training manager can wait." Cue malicious compliance. "Yes, Master Sergeant." And out to the parking lot I go. Yes, I managed to suppress my grin. About an hour later, I saw the sergeant training manager walking across the parking lot. "Specialist, I need your report." "Yes, Sergeant." Master Sergeant Jerk assigned me to sweep the parking lot. "Didn't you tell him that I need your report?" "Yes, Sergeant." "He told me that Sergeant Training Manager can wait." "Oh, he did he?" Yes, Master Sergeant Jerk had previously annoyed Sergeant Training Manager, and he knew that I had teed this one up for him. Enough Sergeant Training Manager goes. I continued to rather slowly sweep the parking lot. Right around lunchtime, I hear the battalion commander's voice coming from the company area, on the other side of the parking lot. While I can't make out what's being said, or to who someone is getting torn a new one. I remember the adage that crap rolls downhill. Turns out that the sergeant training manager went straight to the battalion commander and informed her that he would not be able to generate his report because Master Sergeant Jerk had me sweeping the parking lot even though I had informed them that I needed to complete my report, and tells her that the Master Sergeant Jerk said that she can wait while he has me sweep said parking lot. The battalion commander goes and rips the company commander a new one. Company commander rips first sergeant, and the first sergeant rips the Master Sergeant commander. So, the Master Sergeant Jerk screams at me to come see him right the hell now. So I slowly jog, not run, not walk, over to Master Sergeant Jerk and stand the parade dressed in the company area. Master Sergeant Jerk proceeds to scream at me with spittle flying everywhere, including on me. And while poking me in the chest with his finger accusing me of lying, unfortunately for Master Sergeant Jerk, everyone had heard him say, "Sergeant Training Manager can wait," including, as it turns out, the company commander and the first sergeant. Master Sergeant Operations comes running over and pulls Master Sergeant Jerk off of me, tells me that I'm free to go to lunch and to return at 1300 hours. I told First Sergeant, who had come over too, that I will be going to the Inspector's General office immediately after lunch. A police report was also filed. When the dust settled, I was reassigned back to my platoon. Huzzah! Master Sergeant Jerk took non-judicial punishment. Reduction in rank to Staff Sergeant, forfeiture of pay for 30 days, extra duties and rehabilitative, transferred to Camp Humphreys. For conduct unbecoming, assault, battery, and so on and so on. A month later, I was told to show up at the NCO club there at Yangsan. Everyone, including the battalion commander, was very grateful for the departure of Master Sergeant Jerk, and it was a much more pleasant working environment for everyone. And since I don't drink, everyone brought me all free designated driver soda that I could handle. And my enlistment ended 2 months later. I worked as a North American IT manager for a $300 million company. I was based in the largest development office, and I went to a few remote offices a few times a year on a regular basis. I live in a rural area, and at that point in time, we had no cell service around where I live. I got a cheap flip phone and a service where I could put a $25 charge on the phone for a trip, and for a long time this was never an issue. We got bought out by a much smarter company, and after my first trip I got questioned at great length about my $25 phone charge. Why not just get regular full service and the company would pay for that? I told them that the only time I used a phone was when I was away from the area and the regular unlimited service was expensive. That seemed to shut them up. But the next time I had to hit one of the remote offices, I was told not to buy a phone card, and I would not be reimbursed for it if I did. I lucked out and my flights went well, so there was no need for a phone there. But when I got to the hotel and I wanted to call home and let them know that I got there okay and call my office to make sure things were okay too, my only option was the phone in my hotel room. This was right when cell phones were starting to squeeze that revenue stream out of the hotels, and they were charging upward of $2 a minute for calls. I made sure to call home every night as well as the office every AM. And in a week I ran up a phone bill of over $1,000. I had a hard time keeping a straight face when I put that in my expense report. Needless to say, I got called up about that. And all I could do was forward the email from my manager telling me that if I got a $25 phone card for my cell phone, the company would not pay for it. He tried to backtalk and then say that he had no way of making sure all of that $25 was being used, and on and on. Like I had a Swiss bank account I was salting away cell phone minutes in, and this was going to be a cash cow for me somehow. Thankfully, the director who he had called me up in front of had a brain. He asked me why I got the card. I told him about the phone situation and that the only reason I even owned a cell phone was for traveling for work, and it was never ever an issue in the past. I got excused from the conversation, and later on, I got the begrudging okay from my manager to buy a $25 card for my phone if I was going to be on the road. I thought he was going to cry when he gave me the okay though. Man, that guy was a brown-nosing putz. For just about the last 3 decades, I-58 Mail have been designing software. I've gotten pretty decent at it too. There are of course challenges like insane business requirements or ridiculous deliverable timelines or micromanaging product owners or the ever-popular design by committee, but the worst, and I mean the worst, is that everybody who uses software thinks that they know how to design it. Spoiler alert, they do not. There are design rules, there are best practices, there are laws. There are nuances to accessibility and localization. There are technical constraints. Try to explain that to a stakeholder who can barely spell HTML and think they are a whiz with MS Paint, and savor the empty stare and vacant eyes. But hey, they have worked there for years, so they know best. Well, a few years ago I took a gig at a small software company with a complex and a well-established if antiquated niche software product. They wanted to modernize it and bring it to the web. Excellent. Just what I specialize in. I settled in for a few months of learning the software, the customers and their needs, and the industry it served. All was hunky-dory while I was off on Research Island. But the time came to start putting actual proposals together and doing some testing. This is where the real fun started. The team leader I was assigned to was a mediocre developer who'd failed upward in management and argued with every damn thing I said or proposed. No, Bert, the buttons should not all be scattered randomly on the page. Yes, Bert. Colors do actually need to be consistent and mean something. No, Bert. You shouldn't create a new custom widget to replace a well-established HTML control because you didn't like the thickness of a line. And so on. And because dealing with this youth wasn't enough of a challenge, the business development guy they threw at the team demanded that we create all specs and design artifacts during daily 5-hour workshop meetings, where everybody could have a say about everything. In Elmo's view, nobody will be above anyone else with their annoying skills or knowledge about anything. No, we would all talk it out, and hey, remember kids, there are no wrong answers. As a bonus, we will hold a vote on every decision. But yeah, your uninformed opinion is just as valid as my 3 decades of experience. Design patterns, which would normally take me about an hour of wireframing, took 5 people a full week. And the designs they settled on sucked. Trying to tell the team that I could generate some examples they could then take and adjust went over about as you'd expect. Not at all. The cherry on this nonsense Sunday was a developer they brought in to prototype the thing. In a final attempt to help move things forward, I slapped together a very quick wireframe mockup in HTML, which sent Ernie, the developer, into paroxysms of fury. How dare I invade his domain and create any code? That was his job. He demanded that he was the expert and I should let him take care of everything. For reference, he'd found Google Material Design site and did a copy-paste of their generic framework. 0 customization, 0 color, 0 personality. It was like selling a house with drywall installed, but no finish. As expected, his work was awful and any feedback or suggestions, no matter how politely framed, were met with not only scorn and derision, but anger at my temerity to question his skills, meager as they were. By now, not only was I a troublemaking elitist who thought I could do a better job than the team, I could, but now I was a complainer. Middle manager Bert went and whined to his boss, who called me on the carpet for 15 minutes just as I was on my way out of the door one Friday. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, but apparently I wasn't a team player. I was instructed to only provide input when asked. Period. Malicious compliance incoming. I sat in meetings for hours watching the clown show and counting down to lunchtime. Nobody asked my opinion, so nobody received my opinion. Questions to me were few and far between, and my replies were as neutral and generic as I could make them. At the end of the week, I started getting uninvited to the workshop meetings, and since that was my only deliverable, I sat at my desk with nothing else to do, at all. After all, I wasn't supposed to do anything without being asked. After about 2 weeks of this, I figured I'd cover my back a little, and asked Bert's boss if there were any changes in his instructions. There were not. Apparently I was doing exactly what they wanted. So back to my desk and more hours of waiting to go home. I did not think this would go on forever. After all, the executive team who hired me into this role knew for a fact that they needed my expertise. Their customers informed them almost daily of how outdated the software was. So I sat and did online training and read professional journals and surfed Reddit on my phone, all while watching the frantic pace of ready for the dumpster software being developed all around me, and sat and waited for 3 months. These idiots actually paid me to sit on my hands for more than 3 months. Now, although these clowns were utterly incompetent, the people who ran the company weren't. At some point, they were going to discover what a garbage pile their minions were carefully plugging together, and somebody was going to be blamed. Pretty obvious that the guy who hadn't participated for a quarter year would be the designated scapegoat. So I found another position and bill before they managed to pull their head out long enough to find somebody to fire. As I was strolling out of the door, they were planning on a big release to introduce their all-new updated wonderful product to be launched after all the bugs were ironed out. It's been 3 years since I left. The product never launched. To those who say I'd love a job where I don't have to do anything, I'm sure for some people that would be heaven, but for me, having no purpose was a waste of life. If I'm going to spend my time on something, it's going to be something where I can make a difference. Anything else is a waste. Plus, the days dragged. This is the first half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. Over a decade ago, I came home to find I was being moved out by my wife. We weren't in a great place, but I was blindsided, and I was also served with a protection order that stated that I could not come home without prior written permission. I had to go through my wife to see the kids and so on, and it was in effect for 90 days. I was devastated. A relative connected me with a bulldog of a lawyer. This lady was brilliant and no nonsense. She filed a rebuttal to the protection order but told me these things take time, and we were unlikely to see a judge before the 90 days were up. She was very clear that I must follow the court order to the letter. If there was any evidence otherwise, I will be in an uphill battle if/when my wife renewed it. It only took one day before my now ex needed me to take the kids. I had crashed at a friend's house, so I had no place to take them. So we agreed I'd watch them at home. I waited a few blocks away while waiting for an email. Ex called me and I reminded her of the details of the order and that I wouldn't come until I had permission. This happened twice more that I waited down the street within the first week. So I told her I wouldn't leave where I was staying until I had the email. It was about 20 minutes away and I texted her to remind her. The very next day she again didn't email. We were planning on me picking up the kids to take them to school since their school was only a few minutes from my work. However, because I had not received written permission, I ran out of time to drive to pick up the kids and then make it to their school and work. She called furious that I wasn't there. I reminded her about the permission and that I was out of time. She ended up being very late to work that day. She then wanted to give me blanket permission to come and go as needed, but my lawyer advised against it. Follow the order. The culmination of this was a few weeks later when she again forgot to send permission. Her boyfriend was staying over but didn't have his car with him. They both had to get to work, and that was the day I learned that he was her direct supervisor. My ex had to call a friend from work to pick up the kids and take them to school, and the friend found out. Of course, it got out at their work. Within a week of that, the boyfriend was fired over the relationship and my ex was suspended. By this time I had my own place, so the kids ended up staying with me most days. I later learned that the protection order was a boyfriend's idea. Ex was quite mad about it, as it turned into evidence that I wasn't a threat to her or the family, and the judge was quite harsh with her over it when he settled for support and parenting time. She called it intentional and harmful parental alienation. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.